Hello, I'm Joseph Wargo. I'm a storyteller, and I'd like to read you a bedtime story. It's about 11:30 here in Hawaii, which means it's very late on the mainland. If you're not asleep yet, I hope this story helps you fall asleep. Tonight, I'm going to read from the Brothers Grimm. The story is called The Seven Ravens. So get under your covers, tuck in. You got water, you got a Korean pear, and enjoy. There once lived a man who had 7 sons, and no matter how often he wished it, he still didn't have a little daughter. Finally, his wife gave him hope for another child, and when it was born, it turned out to be a little girl. There was great rejoicing, but the baby was so small and weak that she had to be baptized at home. The father told one of the boys to hurry off to the well to get some baptismal water. The other 6 boys ran after him, and when they got there was such a scramble to be the first to get the water that the pitcher fell into the well. They all stood there stunned, not knowing what to do and not daring to go back home. When the boys failed to return home, their father became impatient and said, "Those wicked boys must have forgotten what they were supposed to do. They're probably playing games." He was afraid that the girl would die unbaptized, and in his frustration he cried out, "I wish those boys would all turn into ravens." As soon as he finished the sentence, he heard a whirring sound over his head and looked up to see 7 coal-black ravens flying off into the distance. It was too late to undo the curse, and no matter how sad the parents felt about the loss of their 7 sons, they consoled themselves somewhat with their precious little daughter, who gained strength quickly and became more beautiful with each passing day. For a long time, the child was not aware that she had brothers, for the parents were careful not to mention it. But one day she happened to hear some people talking about her, saying that, as beautiful as she was, she was still the one responsible for the unfortunate fate of her 7 brothers. Upon hearing this, she felt heartbroken and went to her father and mother to ask if she really did have some brothers and what had happened to them. Then the parents knew that they could no longer keep the secret from her, but they told her that the will of heaven had caused her brother's misfortune, and her birth really had nothing to do with it. But day after day the girl's conscience plagued her, and she believed that it was up to her to disenchant her brothers. She didn't have a moment's peace until finally she secretly decided to leave home and go out into the world to find her brothers and rescue them, no matter what it cost. All that she took with her was a little ring to remind her of her parents, a loaf of bread in case she got hungry, a jug of water in case she got thirsty, and a little stool in case she got tired. And so she started walking, and she traveled very far to the end of the world. She came to the sun, but it was way too hot and frightening, and besides it ate small children up. She ran away as fast as she could and went to the moon, but it was way too cold and also scary and evil, and when the moon saw the child it said, "I smell something, and it's human flesh." The girl raced off as fast as she could and got to the stars, which were friendly and kind, and each one was sitting on its own little chair. The morning star stood up, handed her a wishbone, and said, "Unless you have this wishbone, you won't be able to open up the glass mountain, and that's the place where your brothers are living." The girl took the wishbone, wrapped it up carefully in a cloth, and kept going until she reached the glass mountain. The gates were locked, and she was about to take out the wishbone, but when she took the cloth out there was nothing in it, and she must have lost the gift given to her by the good star. What should she do now? She wanted desperately to save her brothers, but she no longer had the key to the glass mountain. The little sister took a knife, cut off her little finger, put it into the lock, and presto, it opened up. After she had walked in, a little dwarf came up to meet her and asked, "My dear child, what are you looking at?" "My dear child, what are you looking for?" I'm looking for my brothers, the 7 ravens, she replied. The dwarf said, My masters, the ravens, aren't at home, but you can come in and wait for them until they return. Then the dwarf carried in the food for the ravens on 7 little plates and in 7 little glasses. The little sister took a tiny bite from each little plate, and she took a little sip from each little cup. Then she dropped the ring she had brought with her into the last cup. All of a sudden she heard a whirring and fluttering of wings high up in the air, and the dwarf said, My masters, the ravens, will be here in a minute. They arrived just as he said, and they were so hungry and thirsty that they started looking for their plates and cups. One after another of them said, Who's been eating from my plate? Who's been drinking from my cup? It must have been a human mouth. When the seventh raven reached the bottom of his glass, the little ring rolled out. He took a good look at it and recognized that it was a ring belonging to his father and mother, and said, May God grant that our little sister be here. Then we would be saved. Their sister was standing behind the door listening to every word, and when she heard what he said, she came out, and all the ravens got back their human form. They hugged and kissed each other and went happily home. Neat illustration. Well, I hope you enjoyed that bedtime story, and sweet dreams.